this is one that I just always am coming back to this design as an inspiration. I just love this design. Here's a little reward. So I'm just hovering around. This little thing says, "I can help." I mean, this is one woman's consultant business, and she had a friend who did this for her. And it's not, I mean, it probably wasn't super expensive to do, actually. She got a really good deal on it. But I just love the way it again, I mean, does it worry about cramming everything she needs to say into the top, above the so-called above the fold? No, not at all. Of course not. She knows that if the top thing has to get a really quick message across for a second, and then of course you're going to scroll. I just love the use of large type. This little change of service is neat, but it's overlapping here, and it just doesn't have to say a lot. It's just really neat. And then of course a very active footer, which is a contact. And so it's sort of, there's a sequence of, you kind of get the visual, and then you get a few main points, and then you get some, this is brilliant, actually. Can't get content from your client, don't want to write it all by yourself. Yeah, that's a very good positioning statement. It absolutely, there's a series that you end up with the contact, which is her call to action. That's the thing she wants you to do. And so it's all very simple, very clear, and I just love that site. Firefox, the Firefox website. I think this is a nice website. I mean, layout, it feels a little sparse to me somehow. Of course, the main point is they're trying to say a lot. I think the font is a little hard for me to read too, to be honest. It's a little small, and again, they're doing this thing where it's like pale gray background and medium gray text. So I don't like that. I'm not going to actually sit down and read all of this stuff. I mean, my eyes aren't quite that good. I would have to enlarge it a little bit. But I like the footer a lot. I think the footer is really just beautiful somehow. There's good rewards when you click on here. Also, notice one thing is when I hover over these, if you can see that there's a slow fade in. I mean, there's a little fade in there. That's not possible on all browsers, but it's possible on some browsers, and more will have that. But it's, again, a nice little touch that shows that somebody cares, shows that somebody understands the medium. And again, it wasn't just an afterthought that you had a designer doing a flat Photoshop comp and then some robotic person translating it into a web page, which I suppose is a very 1999 way to do things. Radiolab, here's something that's a much more whimsical and funny and whatever site. Really great, though. I think it's just a great site, and it's a fantastic show, by the way, on the radio and podcast. And again, you can see how the whole thing is integrated. So you get down to the bottom and you're completely rewarded. There's a really nice opacity here in the background area, and that's really fun too. And it's obviously telling a weird story, which is kind of what they do. They're really funny, really smart, and obviously you can tell all of that. But it's just a really neat site that sort of rewards you all the way along. It doesn't have a lot of those hover over rewards, which would kind of be nice, I suppose. There's a couple. Those are nice. And again, here's a good example. So it hovers over and it kind of shows you, it's sort of like this is a button, but I'm a button, but I've sort of been hiding, and I show up when you need me. I don't show up all the time. I don't have to show up all the time. I mean, that's, interacting with a web page, one web page can easily be the equivalent in the olden days of interacting with 30 different pages of a magazine. You can't really even draw a comparison, actually. Betabrand, this is an really interesting kind of site. This is an e-commerce site, but it's such a smart one. It's such a smart, cool one. They're San Francisco smarty pants people. And you go down here and there's these wonderful, juicy, gettable, nice little modular blocks of stuff you can buy. And I'm not the least bit surprised that when I hover over them, this cool semi-opaque background thing tells me more about it. Doesn't really need that tooltip there, but brilliant. And obviously when I click on this, something fun's going to happen. I'm going to open up a new thing. And another thing I want to point out about this is if you sit and watch it for a little bit and watch down here where this little side tab is, and you're going to see that every 10 seconds or 20 seconds or something it moves just a tiny bit. And there's also another little thing right up here that'll do that. And I mean, obviously it's based on the way the brain works and the way that tiny subtle movements catch your attention. But again, understatement, respecting the customer a lot, and just, it's the tiniest little nudge. And so they're maintaining the high level of integrity of a brand that's really clean and good and not pushing too hard and just having really good information, but just the tiniest little nudge. So I think that would be an interesting thing to think about doing. That's an interesting little thing. It's beautiful. Look at how that just pops out. Again, it pops out when you need it. It's so cool. I'm just hovering over and it's showing me these things. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's so much better than the cookie cutter e-commerce cart junk that's out there. But it's, it's much because of all the thought that went into it as it is because of some super complicated code, really. And here's a good, this thing comes out, see? So you hover over and it pops out. So I think that's really neat. And then he says, click me. Obviously it's kind of fun, it's light. I mean, I actually might click him because I trust this. This is obviously, they're trying to sell me something. That's pretty obvious, but it's not too pushy. So what happens when I click on this? Be a star on our site, become a Betabrand model citizen. Oh, it's a social, it's like inviting you into their conversation. So this is obviously really smart. So they do something really intelligent, smart, cool, and they're not pretending to be those things. They just are those things, and they take the work to embody those things, and they invite you in to play, which you can't do once you've BS'd someone to death. So it's really nice. So just to wrap it up, interacting with something alive, it's like more like an appliance. It's fine to use the whole space below the fold, on any of those sites they will. So a page can serve different purposes at different points. It can really work at different areas in different ways. When you have stuff that sort of happens when you hover over it, it creates delight and life. And don't forget about link colors, because that's a huge one. Understatement, then the thing. So you can put actually a lot of stuff on the page, but have it understated, and then the things that you need to show will show up. So I say understatement and lots of air. Personally, I just like lots and lots of air, lots of white space. Visual organization, rules, alignment, and information architecture, of course, also. So, so then, what's the design process? Like, not just PSD comps. Then what? Integrated with a team? Maybe. So maybe that's this thing, is to integrate your design process with the team. I don't know exactly where to go from here, but I think there's got to be something, because it matters, I mean, being able to come up with something like this, I mean, at a different scale. Oh, here's another beautiful thing, by the way, if you hover over these. But, this is a, how much is this? I don't know. Is this a $50,000 site? Is it a $100,000 site? I don't know. I mean, I don't know about those kinds of numbers, but it's an amazing site. They've obviously taken the time, but they found really smart people too. I mean, you could also pay tons of money and not have something this great. It's as much about them as anything else. God, look at these. When you hover over these, I mean, that's a beautiful reward. It just makes it, it's just alive. It's fun. And to think about those after the fact. I mean, you can see, like, as a designer, your role is to design the interaction, the experience, the whole feeling, and there's got to be a way in which we can break out of the Photoshop comp model into something else. There's some really radical, designers. There's one named Andy Clark who wrote a really amazing article about designing in the browser, and he proposes just designing in the browser, like just directly in the browser with CSS, and so you can see what's happening as it's happening, which is pretty interesting, but a little extreme, probably, maybe. But somehow we've got to change the process. And I think a lot of designers enjoy kind of going away, working in their thing, coming up with something amazing, and then saying, here, how is it? I think breaking out of that process for them might be a little hard, but somehow I think the answer is probably to find a process where you as a designer still enjoy the process and still have a lot of fun and still get a lot out of it, but somehow doesn't pretend that these issues don't exist, because I just think that these sites and what you can really do are so great.